Soyons le changement que nous avons tous besoin pour un nouveau monde. Plus d'exemples positifs, pas de limite à tout ce qu'on peut accomplir. Maintenant, aujourd'hui, avec urgence, il est temps. La prochaine génération nous a attendu pendant trop longtemps. Mais finalement, nous sommes là avec l'amour, patience et la joie. Jusqu'à la fin, avec l'amour, patience et la joie.
sipping on the teas of some island breeze. And we got men that still don't borrow. No. For the love that we share, we not find it anyway. Seems like our day yesterday. For the time is a time for I and I to stand. In love and you be taking. Oh, yeah. Ready for love is ready for you. Peace and unity, I say what we should do. For now it's not the time for us to be divided. We say people of the world have you hard enough. See the world still burning, but it went rough. We say man and man and they are look security. All the evil they man do to the majority. We say long gone are the days of weak and right. We say people fight the people, say they all worldwide. We say I stand here and I'm over everybody. Babylon cannot see the tears we cry. Now the old world is in a calamity. We say man, watch your friend, he's your enemy. We say the COVID-19, they ban you and me. I know we searching for somebody, say we set us free. We can live together. No more one another. Spread some joy and take away the sorrow. We don't make up now. We do not come tomorrow. We can live together. No more one another. Spread some joy and take away the sorrow. We don't make up now. We do not come tomorrow. We can live together. No more one another. Spread some joy and take away the sorrow. We don't make up now. We do not come tomorrow.
Yeah, coming to you live from the bunker. My own personal COVID crisis hideout, aka the basement. They drop bombs on the news. I come down here and drop bombs with music. You know, I think it's about that time though. Set it off like I still say fresh dope and things of that sort. I don't shoot up, smoke crack, or take shorts. Your thoughts are always welcome. I seldom won't observe another's perspective. Corrective lenses are something that I wear so I can see the globe real clear. Look, there's famine over there, plus their families in fear of disease and the stress that lingers in the air. These are the words of a man in purgatory, words of a simpleton living in oblivion. Is this the model for life we were envisioning? Free as can be in a world of imprisonment. I dare you to check new territory. American dream, time for another story. One where I don't choke to keep afloat. I'm sick of living off false visions of hope. With a knife to my own throat, stick a dynamite inside my overcoat. Because I know the ropes. Reality in this world is bought and sold. A very limited scope of life is showed. And I'm just one in the mold, fully controlled. Left to a road in my humble abode. You won't hear me because I got no loot. You don't hear me because it won't compute. I'm docile, psycho, have you heard of such? I'm invisible and impossible to touch. We do it just like this. We do it just like that. We do it just like this. Take you around the world and back. We do it just like this. We do it just like that. We do it just like this. Take you around the world and back.
Toujours là si tu le veux. L'amour est toujours là, allez ouvre les yeux, on peut partir ensemble. L'amour est toujours là si tu le
When I choose to look at this time. Well, hello everybody. How's it going?
Good.
Oh,
Uh,
Great, great.
Good, good. First of all, I want to thank you all for being in the video. I know it kind of started what seems like last year, you know, a long time ago, and but it really blossomed into something that was very therapeutic for me during the quarantine time. And then the messages of Ishmael and Lulu and Samir and Cam and Kamyar and all these vocalists were expressing, you know, love throughout the world and unity. And Cam, you know, Cam's vocal that you will see is just very appropriate for what had come into our world, you know, kind of unexpectedly, but very necessarily. What up, Paul? This kind of revolution that's happening right now. So I just wanted to talk about, you know, music is very interesting because when art takes its form, it can mean different things as time goes by. You know, as different things happen in society and in our world, the meaning of a song can evolve as well. And I just kind of want to pass the mic around and hear from each of you, and like, you know, hear how you're feeling and how it feels to be a part of something like this where we can, you know, raise funds for Black Lives Matter and for all of the work that Playing for Change does. So first of all, we have Lulu up here down in Austin, Texas. And Lulu, like, what are you feeling? How are you?
Hi guys, hi everyone.
um,
I'm feeling good. I mean, I'm awake. I'm here. I think when you first reached out, you know, it was somewhat in the beginning of the pandemic, self-isolation. And I think overall, I was self-isolated for about 79 days. And now I'm actually back to work. I work in a social distance, strange format restaurant that I'm helping out. But I was, you know, it was the beginning of the pandemic, and when you reached out, I was just really looking forward to sharing something positive and being uplifting, and I was still uncertain of what was going on. So it was just a nice way to reconnect and feel comfortable. I'm actually glad. I'm actually glad that you reached out then to do this than now, because I think now would have been a lot angrier and aggressive, and I think that it would still be a message, but maybe I wouldn't have been so like uplifting. I think I felt a lot more peaceful early on the pandemic than now. Now I'm just like, there's a lot of things going in my head. I'm worried now that we're 3-4 months into this pandemic of like the rise in world poverty. I think people aren't really looking at how, I mean, a cashless society is eradicating a huge group of population that's living off of cash. And so I'm thinking about poverty, and then obviously like the mother of a Black daughter, like I'm angry. Like I never thought after like 19 years, I was gonna have to protect her against racism. Like I didn't even think about it when I was having her, that it was gonna be an issue. So there's a lot of like anger and frustration. So in some ways, I'm very happy that we did what we did, you know, 3 months ago, to kind of just have that uplifting effect. So that's where I'm at.
That's awesome. The video is definitely uplifting, and you know, I agree that, you know, as things have shifted in the last few months, the militant, you know, inner anger is definitely a thing I think we're all feeling, the whole world. So so let's go down here to Samir. Samir, member of the Reminders, wonderful lyricist and poet. And how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, and it's just like Lulu said. I think the timing was perfect. Definitely now would have been. I'm sure the tone of the song would have been a lot different. The whole video, the energy would have been a lot different. But I think you caught us at a great time. we have been self-quarantined, self-isolated, and just really reflecting on the music that we have been making over the years. And I'm really curious to see how it turned out. I'm really excited to be a part of it. And yeah, the energy going on right now is definitely, the anger is necessary. The climate, everything about that energy is necessary. But I think people like us are also needed to bring a little light to the madness going on.
100%. I think one thing I was talking about earlier was just how art, kind of evolves, as times evolve. A song in your life can just continue to mean different stuff and relate to different aspects of your life. And there's 46 musicians in this video, and everybody brings something different. I mean, it really is amazing. I'd like to scoot across the world now and say hi to my sister Yumiko in Japan. Hi, Yumiko. You're sideways. Can you flip your phone?
Yes, I can.
Yay.
Hey.
So
well, it's 2 a.m. here.
Oh.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Don't I look sleepy?
No, you look like a party monster.
So,
oh, thank you.
Yumiko, how is it in Japan, and how has it been exposed in Japan with everything that's been happening in America?
It's so much less actually. But still people think about like Black Lives Matter too. And people are talking about at different places, and also this huge pandemic too. But in Japan, people we don't really like it, but we wear masks all the time, especially this time period, because of the flowering, like pollen.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't even count how many masks that I made and shipped them out. And then your parents got mine too.
Yay, thank you so much.
Yay. Yeah. But still, like, all the music business are still really, really slow. It's started coming back just little by little, but still very slow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about how much of the protesting and the revolution that's going on in America, how much is that on the news in Japan?
It's a lot.
Good.
And also same time, this presidential election thing is going on too.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
It's a pretty important election.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I wish the world could vote for our president and not just the US.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope I can do that too.
Well, thank you. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Yeah, I love you. I'm going to scoot over to
Love
Ishmael
you too.
over here. Ishmael is in Richmond, Virginia, and he plays with a group called Jwala Collective. He is an ambassador to the Gembre, and that's the Moroccan instrument. And he's been a good friend of mine for many years, and love to hear how you're doing, Ish.
I'm doing good, man. How are you?
Doing okay? Doing okay? Staying through?
Yep. Yeah, man. Pretty honored to be a part of this thing. We all get the opportunity to do something, hopefully towards a great change down the road, but only time will tell on that one.
Yeah. So what's the vibe in Richmond like?
It's still protesting. People still out there doing their thing, peaceful at daytime and nighttime. It depends on the day. Couple of days ago, actually, we had the military blocked my neighborhood because some white supremacist was driving around with an AK-47. It was pretty intense, but it's been pretty chill since then.
crazy. Well, Richmond's going to be one of those towns where, you know, the Confederate statues come down, and
Yep.
and there will be, you know, white Southern people. I mean, and honestly, I was in New Orleans one time and I saw a black guy defending the Confederate statue that was in, you know,
Oh, wow.
and it's just like, you know, obviously the argument's always been it's heritage, it's not racism, and I'm like, well, no, not to me, you know, not to people of color. But
Exactly.
that'll be interesting to see. Hopefully that happens peacefully, you know.
Yep, exactly. So we'll just wait and see.
Yeah. Hey, Paul, how's it going over there in Portland?
Unmute myself. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, great. You know, it's good, man. It's sunny. It's not. We had January for the first half, and now we're back into summertime, so it's good.
That's cool.
Yeah. You know, Portland's good, man. There's a lot of youth that are active right now, which is great to see. I've been a part of something just kind of sprung up called PDX, Resistance Assistance, and it's just like kind of my crew, my friends, and they saw the need to take care of all the protesters and demonstrators that are showing up every night to block freeways and do whatever. So they're supporting Black businesses, finding pizzerias that are Black owned, and taking donation money and purchasing food, beverages, everything. And I think in the last 20 days, they've spent over $15,000 and showed up every night at Revolution Hall at 6 o'clock and, you know, just fed, give drinks to people, have supplies, rain ponchos, you know, tampons, everything, just basically like a supply store for free that people have been donating to. And so it's nice to be able to help in some way, just to keep the pressure on and keep things going. They pulled down, we met at Jefferson High School a few times, and they pulled down the Jefferson statue, pulled down George Washington statue. I mean, it's like, we're not the South, but there's a pretty rich racist history of Oregon. If anyone knows that, it's basically a KKK state. You know, it was like a northern state that was founded by Southern racists. You know, so it's pretty heavy.
I watched a long, for about an hour, a live feed from the state capital of Oregon. When the protests first started, and I learned a lot about that. You know, it was basically like, you know, only whites allowed in Oregon at the beginning, and that was like the plan, you know.
Absolutely.
So it's just these things, you know, these things that people don't know that they need to educate themselves on to really understand how bad it is.
Yeah. Well, and on top of that, how, you know, Portland, you know, anybody who's toured here and has been through Portland, you know, it's like, yeah, it's a pretty white city. And it kind of does a disservice to the rich cultural history of what Portland is, you know, that you know, there's a huge Black community here, and there's a huge history. Unfortunately, with gentrification and everything else, people get pushed out to the numbers, you know, as they say. I live out on 81st, you know, and you know, it's at least still as diverse as the inner part of Portland used to be, but I'm a part of the gentrification of gentrifying the numbers now, you know what I mean? So it's, if people don't recognize that history, you know, that it's that ignorance that really is part of the problem that continues everything, you know?
Yeah, it's detrimental to our future, you know, not knowing the past.
Absolutely.
So, well, thank you. And
yeah, and it's been great to be a part of this project, man. Like, thank you for reaching out. And, you know, I think having all this time to yourself to work on stuff, I get the paralysis by perfection, you know, as a producer, where it's like I start my own stuff and I can't ever finish anything because it's not perfect. But when somebody reaches out to me and says, hey, can you throw me this or do this? I'm like, done, you know, and it's like all of a sudden those creative blocks just get blown away. And so I appreciate that anytime somebody's like, you know, just do a little thing for me. I'm like, okay, I can do a little thing.
Yeah, and so, I will say, Paul, that you went above and beyond. You guys shall see. Paul's video production skills are pretty on point. So anyways, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And Is any Dave? How you doing?
I'm doing well, man.
Where are you? Are you in New York?
I'm back and forth between, very carefully going back and forth between Brooklyn and where my folks are up here in Connecticut, in Western Connecticut, and spending some time here doing some writing and different things and participating in a lot of these kinds of projects, which I'm honored to be involved in. And thank you again for reaching out to be part of this. But no, still spending a lot of time in Brooklyn too. And, you know, just I'm mostly doing a lot of just learning, listening, watching, reading. I feel like it's just kind of crazy how many years I spent feeling like I understood certain situations and certain institutions and what their purposes were, and just, you know, how incorrect some of that was, how obviously incorrect some of that was, and it's going to take time to really ingest all of that. And I've also been spending a ton of time just talking to family and friends and people that I know, and trying to sort of, you know, hip them to some of those things and just have like difficult, awkward discussions that I feel like are necessary to happen, that are kind of scary at times, but that's sort of what I'm focusing on, in addition to just donating and staying vocal and staying active and trying to make our band more vocal for the first, you know, it's should have been a long time ago. It shouldn't take something like this to cause that, but that's one of the things that this pandemic, you know, it's right there in everybody's face. You know, nobody can look away at this time, and I think that in itself is a good thing in terms of causing forward motion, you know, in the right direction.
Well, I really appreciate you jumping in on the project and in on the call. You know, I think what you just said is huge, and it made me think of something like, you know, my little town, I'm from Northern Virginia, outside of DC, and, you know, growing up, I wasn't super aware of, you know, the beliefs or political affiliation of my surroundings. But as I got older, I started realizing, like, okay, you know, there's, you know, I'm still in Virginia. You know, there's some good old boy action going on, and my town put up a "Welcome to Clifton, where Black Lives Matter" banner. And the first person to comment was a Hispanic woman. And my parents just got into town last night, and we stayed up, and like you said, Dave, we were just talking, and like, you know, my parents have never had, you know, they raised me to accept everybody equally. You know, they're good people. But they're like, minds are, you know, blowing up with, you know, they watched 13th, you know, they're now doing stuff that is, you know, taking 70 years of their life, and really they're looking back and being like, wow, like, what was really happening here? And, you know, this Hispanic woman commented on the banner in our town, and she said, "This is fake." She's like, "When I go to the playground with my kids and I'm Hispanic around, you know, these rich white families, they look at her like, why did you come to our playground? You know, why didn't you go to your playground?" And she said that first comment on the message board when the banner went up. And I'm like, that's awesome. Because, you know, she's like, look, I'm sure some of you believe Black Lives Matter, but she literally called everybody out and was like, I get shit, you know, for going to the playground with my kids, and I live in this town, you know? And I just think it's all those perspectives that people are starting to understand and see. And, you know, it's very important. And next I want to talk with Cam. So I will give you a little bit of a clue about Cam's part. You know, her lyric is, "It's hard to function when it's always something." And I felt Cam's oppression in her delivery, in her vocal on this video. And it was one of the ones that I was just really glad that the video took this long to do, because that message is more important now than it was before the George Floyd thing, you know, and the protests and the riots. And so, Cam, hi, you look beautiful. And how are you doing?
Thank you. I am doing great. I'm just gonna warn y'all, it's storming really bad where I'm at. I'm in Houston, Texas, and it's hurricane season, y'all. But while I know that the world might feel like it's on fire for the first time in a lot of folks' lives, especially the white people on this call's lives, the world's always been on fire to me. And Jeff, I'm so grateful to you for not only giving me a platform and all of us just a way to get that energy out at the beginning of the pandemic, but a way for all of us to come together, because I know that, you know, this is definitely a combination that only you could have done, and I'm so happy to be a part of it. But I feel so happy right now because for the first time in my life, I'm not looked at as crazy or aggressive or mean, and the people that are in my life are seeing, wow, what the fuck have we been sleeping on? What have we been doing? And, you know, I've been getting overloaded with apologies, and I've been telling my friends and my colleagues, I'm like, it's not apologies. We want action. And I feel like, aside from self-education, projects like this are a form of action where you bring folks together that normally wouldn't work together. You bring folks together to hear different perspectives that they're not in charge of, so they're able to be a part of a message that necessarily would have never made it to them. So I think that this is a really cool thing. I love the mystery behind it. It stressed me out definitely when I was recording it at first, because this was so new to me. You know, learning the technical aspect of how my world works was something that I got educated on during the pandemic. And this recording was one of the first things that I recorded of myself ever. So this is cool. And I'm just so happy to be here. And I want to encourage everyone that's on the call today that if you're doing that education and you start getting frustrated or you start feeling sad, continue, push through. The history is a long one. It's a dark one. But the only way that I feel like we're going to recover is by continuing to stay educated, continuing to stay listening with open ears and minds and hearts, and continuing to do cool shit like this with Jeff.
Well, thank you so much. You know, it's just a thing. When I started the video, I was like, oh, I'll send it to one person and maybe we'll do a jam. Actually, I started it just to be like, here's what I did today, bored at home. And then I was like, this isn't cool. You know, and then I started thinking about my people, and I was like, I wonder who would want to like just do something over this beat, you know. And you were definitely one of the first that came to mind, so thank you. So over here with the NASA shirt on, and that sexy beard is Mike Tallman, who is also helping us with the artwork for the project. And Mike is in an interracial marriage. And I think that is a very, very interesting thing to talk about right now. Like, what does it feel like to be a white guy married to a black woman?
It's definitely interesting. I mean, when all this stuff started heating up, you know, on the social justice front, not specifically anything about the pandemic, but, you know, Kim and I have had a lot of talks, and she just, at one point, straight up said, would you be as passionate and as fired up as you are if you weren't married to me? And I had to sit and think about that for a while. And my answer was yes, I think I would, but I don't think I would have as much understanding going into it, because, you know, she's been teaching me a lot for the last 8 years about the stuff that she goes through daily. That is something that I just never would have realized in my own experience. So, but when she brought that question to me, it took me back for a minute. I had to think, and, you know, it's just, I feel like I have a good understanding, just based on the last 8 years of learning from her, but I'm learning more every day right now in all of this, trying to educate myself, trying to have these conversations trying to just listen in on as many of these kind of things and get other people's experiences. So, you know, I'm just trying to take it all in and channel it into something positive and something that moves the fight forward in the right direction any way I can.
Well, I appreciate that. You know, if you guys all follow Adnoise Studios, you can see Mike's been doing a lot of art to get, you know, some of these, you know, these slogans, not slogans, but just like these messages, educate yourself, you know, Black Lives Matter, like things that I remember when Black Lives Matter started, I was so upset. I was like, why the hell do we even have to say that? You know, but it started to just really be like the most fundamental thing. Black Lives Matter. Who wouldn't say that? If you can't say that, get off. Go like wherever. Sink yourself in the bottom of the ocean. But it's just a thing where, like, you know, even having these talks and just pointing out, like, Mike's in an interracial marriage. Lulu has a black child. Cam has a completely different experience. Desi's a black man who was, and we'll go to Desi next, who was, you know, doing tours in the 80s, Rock Against Racism. And you know, Desi's music in that time is responsible for freeing Nelson Mandela. You know, that movement had to happen. And Desi, can you, first of all, love you, bro. And, you know, good to see you. But tell us about, you know, what it looks like, because you've seen this in the past before. You know, you have lived more years. So what do you think? What's going on? Oh, hold on. I have you muted. Hold on. Try it now. No. All right, there we go. Nope, keeps muting. There we go. Try it now, Des.
You can hear me?
Yeah.
You can hear me? All right. For me, I was kind of lucky because in my time when I first started getting into music, I started getting into music right in at the times of the evolution of Rastafari, which means I grew up at the time when Peter Tosh, you know, Peter Tosh to me was like, that's one of the guys I look up to, because, you know, and Peter Tosh and all the Rasta elders that I listened to when I first started getting into the music especially, that's the education I got. And that education that I got all these years ago, I'm seeing it right in this time today, in 2020. Because like, Jeff, you mentioned that I did a Rock Against Racism tour. I remember we went into Mississippi and one of the organizers took us to stay at her house. And the next morning when we got up and we went outside, her whole neighborhood was on the street telling her, we got to get out of there. And she had to end up moving out of there too. So, I mean, you know, this has been going on for a long time. So for me, what's happening now is a little less shocking for me than for maybe the younger generation like you guys. It might be a little less, but for me is, you know, something that's, you know, it's been going on forever. And it's going on in the West Indies too, where I'm from. Because, for example, I can be from a certain parish in the Caribbean. And when I was growing up, I used to go swim on a certain section of the ocean when I was growing up. And now I come to live in America and I go back to my country and I can't go back to swim on the beach now because the Hilton Hotel owns the beach and it's a private beach. And stuff like that shouldn't be happening. You know, you should be able to go anywhere you want, you know, and that goes for me too. If I have property in the Caribbean and it's leading into a place where people need to go see, I have to let them go see it, you know? So, but like the other folks said, I'm just stoked to be a part of this project, man. Thank you.
Thank you, Desi. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, and we'll see you later again in our reggae class today, maybe.
Hey, hopefully.
Hopefully. So let's go to Valor. Everybody, this is Valor Trucks over here. He's down in Georgia.
Yeah.
And
nice.
Valor is about, I can't begin to tell you how amazing Valor's portion to the video is. He is a virtuoso, and he is amazing. And one thing I would like to mention is that Valor is the son of Butch Trucks, who's the drummer for the Allman Brothers, who was one of the first popular American bands that had a mixed band. You know, they had 2 black guys in the band to start, if I'm correct. Is that right?
Just one to start, but they hired Lamar Williams in 1972 after Barry Oakley died. So in 72, yes, there were 2 black members and a 6-member band out of Macon, Georgia. Yeah.
Out of Georgia. I mean, yeah. And, you know, there's probably, anyways, I want you to just talk about how you're feeling and how your family's doing. But I would like you to talk about that history a little bit and maybe some things you observed growing up that educated you.
For sure. And before I do anything else, I feel compelled to say this. When Jeff sent the list of who was participating in this song, I spent the last few days just getting up on everyone's music. I mean, Circles Around the Sun, Turquoise, I've seen you guys before, and Dave, I think you and I've even met before, but I'm not worthy. You guys are all amazing. I am so honored to be part of this. And yes, so I grew up, I was born in Macon, Georgia. You know, my father was part of the Allman Brothers Band. It was a mixed race band from the Deep South in the 1970s. And I grew up around really Southern people, you know? And, you know, there's this kind of passive attitude that gets handed down to those of us who grew up in the South of tolerance. He's going to say these racist things and we just let him do it. And I think thankfully we're approaching the end of that kind of tolerance anymore. You know, when your uncle at Thanksgiving comes in saying something bad, someone's going to step up and say, no, that's not how things go. But I mean, for me personally, what's been most gratifying for me is this month, June of 2020, was supposed to be a big month for me and my family. I just turned 50 yesterday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. My wife has a birthday. She turned 40 at the beginning of the month, and my daughter just turned 18 and graduated high school. This was going to be a huge month for us. We're going to travel. We're going to do something big, but the virus has kept us all here. My daughter has started her first job at a Starbucks, and she was considering, you know, she lives in Lexington, Kentucky. She's about to start college. She's been participating in the protests up there every week. She just started a job at Starbucks, and when they announced that Starbucks was not going to allow Black Lives Matter, you know, t-shirts and whatnot at work, she almost quit, but they changed her position and her branch didn't care anyway. So I am nothing but proud of her, and I have nothing but hope for the next generation because look, here we are. Things are, you know, everyone's lights are on right now, you know? And personally, you know, music has helped for me. The day of George Floyd's death, I was just paralyzed for 24 hours. I couldn't do anything. And part of that was just me trying to ask myself, well, why did it take till now? You know? And the first song that got to me on that cultural level was the aha moment that went off when I was listening to Charlie Mingus, and I realized that the song Fables of Falvus had lyrics and was about the racist, about desegregation, right? About the Little Rock. And so when I finally was able to get up off the couch and do something, that's what I did, is I came into the studio and I just put together an arrangement of Fables of Falvus. And, you know, that's where I've been. So, I mean, Jeff, thank you for letting me be part of this. It's super complicated. I feel my privilege. I'm feeling, you know, I have equal parts kind of shame that it took 50 years of my life to not be ashamed to be out in the world and say things that are true. but I'm also encouraged that so many other people are there, you know? So that's where I'm at. So thanks for letting me be part of this.
Thanks for being with us. And, you know, I had, you know, in Denver, we've had some pretty peaceful protests. It started out pretty violent at first. I don't know where the violence came from. I do believe there's been a lot of instigating going on, but I was driving around to Lyons, Colorado, a couple little towns, picking up some things for Facebook Marketplace. And there were children on the corner of this small town for maybe 20 cars that drive by throughout the day, holding up signs, you know, and it was really, I'm getting goosebumps right now. It was just really, it gave me hope, really, because, you know, people think you got to go to DC to get something done. You got to do this, you got to do that. But really, the way that the structure is if you start on the small level of your local community, that's really the only way to get anything done.
Yeah, I mean, I live in Lawrenceville. Lawrenceville is a small, up in Gwinnett County, for those of you who know the Atlanta area. It's a bedroom community. It's you know, it's not, because it's Atlanta, it's not completely white, but it's more white than Atlanta. And right. In downtown little Lawrenceville, we had people out there protesting with signs, and I was like, yeah, something's happening. And I'm glad for it.
It's been great to see, and that kind of goes back to what Cam says, is like she's actually feeling some joy about how this thing is really the forefront, and the conversations are shifting. You know, the line is moving this way ever so slightly, but the acceptance and tolerance line of, like you said, oh, my friend, yeah, he just, oh, this, that guy, oh yeah, no, it's like unfriend, and that's a metaphor using Facebook, but nonetheless, it's an honor to be in the presence of all of you who are thinking like-minded, which brings me to my buddy up here, Mark Levy, and we've actually gotten to talk in person recently. He lives in Denver as well. He's a great drummer, plays with Circles Around the Sun, and you know, Mark's had a rough last year. You know, he lost a bandmate, and it's been a lot of things just kind of piling up, and now this. And how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty well.
All things considered?
Yeah, all things considered. You know, I mean, I'm definitely aware of my privilege in general, and then trying to focus on all the things that I have to be grateful for. And that's a lot, you know, it adds up, and it adds up to a lot more than all the bad things, you know, that you can't control. I mean, life is going to come at you no matter how you cut it. So yeah, that's, I've been taking this time to really reflect and ask a lot of questions and be okay not knowing the answers, but also seeking answers within that, which it seems kind of contradictory, but what else are we to do, you know? So I've been trying to educate myself, get involved in as many ways as I can. I mean, I've donated more money. I've always liked to donate money consistently to like environmental causes, a little bit of political action in my life, but you know, the last month, you know, more money than I think like ever in one kind of like time period in my life. I've kind of shifted towards, you know, away from my bills and towards action. You know, like I was just thinking when you were talking about our family members, that maybe they come with this ignorance and we kind of can take it and put it in a different box. Like, that's not us, that's not me, so I don't need to condemn it. I am hopeful that that time is nearing its end or has met its end. You know, and to me, to be not racist is not enough now. Like, we must be anti-racist,
right? Or
we're just feeding the monster, you know, and
Correct.
letting it hide under the bed. So, you know, for me, it's that education and consistency, resilience. These are all things that I hope are going to be built on during this time for us. And, you know, a project like this, to use our music to come together as a large group of musicians with a like-minded goal, and to use the power of music. I think we've all had the questions in our lives like, what am I really, what is my purpose? What am I doing with the music? Why am I out here, beating my body up on the road or whatever in my mind, whatever it is. I think we've all come to the realization that music is a powerful way to unite us beyond words, beyond skin color, beyond really anything but this moment that we share together and can express together and be, together. And so for you to put this together is huge. And I'm so grateful that we can provide a little bit of light at the end of this long, dark tunnel that we're in. Or maybe it's at the sides of the tunnel. I don't know where the light is, but we've got the light, and I'm glad that we're all doing it, and I'm yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. It's an honor to have you as a part of it as well. I think, Honeycomb, are you there? Or I can't see you, but
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just driving.
What up, Gabe? So we'll talk to you for a second, and then we'll finish up with Kamyar over here. So Gabe, first of all, thank you. I love your contribution to the video, and I think you will be pleased to see who you can say that you recorded with after you see your part.
Yeah.
Pretty dope. But yeah, man, like, I know being a black man in kind of in a very white music scene that is kind of like the jam band scene and the electronic, bass music scene. What has your experience been identifying and I think I've seen photos of you and your mom, and your mom's white and your dad's black, correct?
Yeah.
So where are you at? What are your thoughts? What has your experience been, and how are you feeling about all of this?
We'll start off my very first festival experience. I'm pulling up. This is like 2009 maybe, and I'm pulling up where when you're in the line of cars waiting to get in and stuff. And then this is the very first interaction I had with anybody. Somebody comes up to the car and rolls down the window, and then they go, "Look at my friend," and then they go, "We don't like niggas here." That was the first thing they said, and I'm like, that was my first experience for festivals, so it definitely left a sour taste in my mouth right in the beginning about going to festivals. But other than that experience, like, I haven't really experienced too much like racismness in the scene, and it hasn't really been. I haven't noticed like me being black affecting my progression as a musician either. But definitely this whole thing that's going on right now is just, it's definitely a little overwhelming for me, because I try to like not be like looking on the internet about stuff, but this is something that you can't really like ignore. So it's been really crazy trying to deal with all this. I definitely have my fair share of experiences outside of the music industry with police, and just definitely growing up. I grew up in a all white town pretty much. I was the only black kid in my grade, and it was like I'm mixed, so I wasn't black enough to be black, and I wasn't white enough to be white. So it was like I would get both sides of the spectrum, like people being racist to me growing up, everybody representing the South in Connecticut, even though it's like they'd be flying their Confederate flags or whatever, and like everybody and their mother would say the N-word, and I feel like it definitely affected me in sports teams and stuff like that. So it was interesting growing up, for sure. I know I'm going off on a tangent. I'm kind of like driving and stuff, but.
Oh, Jeff, you're muted now.
Jeff, we can't hear you.
Jeff, you're muted now.
So yeah, sorry about that. No, Gabe, I just, the phenomenon of being a mixed child and not being black enough to be black and not being white enough to be white, like, I think that's something people really grapple with, even that aren't mixed, you know, just because, you know, if you're not doing what is stereotypically black or stereotypically white, you know, people will have internal racism, you know, black on black, you know, and it's just like, what do you have to do? Like, what do we have to do to get past that? We're just people, you know, what is it? I don't know, but
I wanted to say thanks for having me involved with this project, and it's cool to see the list of people who are involved in this, and grateful to have my name listed with everybody.
Well, it's great. It's great to have you in, and I just want to reiterate that, like, obviously it was cool to do this for the pandemic and whatever fun project to keep us going, bring us together, but like, just this conversation, like, it's just really, really, really grateful that we have this opportunity and this time to connect. This crowd is an insanely diverse crowd on this call, and and brings us to our Iranian brother over here, Kamyar. And Kamyar is an immigrant, and he's in an amazing punk rock band in DC called Time is Fire that was started with Lulu and I's buddy Hash. You guys, some of you probably have met Hash. You won't forget if you have. But anyways, Kamyar, what has been your history throughout your life that you've seen as somebody that's from an area, and Lulu as well, you know, grew up in revolution in Iran. And what's your take on all this?
Salam. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
It's good to see your smiles and see you holding up strong with your fist up in the sky, punching the evil one gut at a time. But to make a speaking of our friend Hatch, make a long story short, I was
speak up a little bit.
Can you hear me now? Is that better?
Yeah, a little better.
Okay. I was born in Iran at a time where it was the aftermath of the Iran-Iraq war. The whole world against Iran for 8 years, and then I went through the shelter times, and my parents holding me in the shelter for a day or two because the rockets were still flying in. So with that mindset being welcome to the world, I have a different perspective on normal moments and happy moments and joyful moments. I probably those shakes probably shook my understanding of things a little bit, but probably in a good way. So I always look at art in a way of a language that only, for me personally, my art grows in the dark air, in silence, in patience, and in its own time. And I think that, but then there are moments where somebody kicks the door open and comes in and screams at you. And at that moment, if the person does not stand up to that scream, we are welcoming the beast into our souls and into our hearts. And just being born into, you know, fascism of the world against one country, then that country became another fascist against others, and then things and money and gun and all the oil and stuff. And to me, it's more of a the economic battle of cultures who want to hold on to things that are very rare number of folks that they hold the table. And I think, thank goodness, in Congress we have probably 20 years on these folks, and they're gonna, you know, naturally just like breathe the air of other life, and hopefully we'll have younger minds in this Congress that things will get better. So I do have hope for America. I think that coming from somewhere that the light needs to be defined first before finding it, but at least in America there is a light, there is an understanding of light, and now there's a unity of understanding of light and who is with and against it. As we were speaking, there is not racist. You're either anti-racist or you're with them. And so I think I'm really thankful for you to start this project. And at the time you hit me up, I was going through, after the pandemic, I started missing Iran like never before the past 12 years. And I just realized I'm saying it in a very, you know, in a way that it's not about necessarily anybody or anything, but it's just as an immigrant, as an Iranian, with the way I am, I never felt belonged to this part of the world. And because of that, because I entered Manassas and then I went to a part of Maryland that you get, I mean, yes, there are people shouting at me and stuff, but then it's the look, it's the idea of, okay, well, we're gonna go somewhere that we don't belong and they don't want me there, but then I'll have a beer or two there. But what's the point of doing that? Why? What am I gonna enjoy there? So let's not even do that. And that creates a separation between people who are not born in this country, you know? And so for me, it was when you hit me up, I was in the dark zone of where it's home. And when you hit me up, that was like a nice distraction. The music I was creating at the time were really focused on Iran and Iranian poetry and what I heard when I was a child. And then what you brought up was like, okay, let's just think general of everybody now instead of me and my pain. And I realized, like, you know, that's why that shows the poem I did. Because, you know, it talks about if you don't see pain in others, you might as well not call yourself a human being. And so that was the energy I felt from the idea you sent and the way you mentioned the folks involved. And I think that just learning to sit down with art and listen to art, generally any form of art, even visual art, listening to it with a heart. I think it's like important to make sure that we are not normalizing things. We are not creating art against something because that's the pattern of something. I am hoping that the arts we are all creating is something to either stop an aggressive movement or be a direct action and not just a way of posting our work on a platform and taking the platform away from folks and artists that deserve that platform way more than others at times, different times. And I think it's important to coexist more than just a sticker on a car and understand that it's not about mentioning names or races or this person, that person. It's more about sharing food, hearing stories, enjoying each other's stories, and making a strong team move together to make the world a better place. And I find that in this project, so I appreciate all of you, and I thank you, Jeff, for starting it.
Well, thank you, Kamyar. Your music and the video is just really, really amazing. And you know, I guess we kind of talked to everybody, but I just want to say that, you know, all of you are my friends, and we're really lucky to have access to each other. So I just want you to encourage you guys to stay in touch. Like with me in the pandemic at first, I just kind of started talking to more people than I did before, and there was less distraction in the world. And you know, these resources, these people that are on this call and, you know, and further into your lives and other people's lives, like people are an amazing resource, and it's just real honor to be surrounded by you guys and everybody else that's in the video that couldn't be on the call. And my emotions are just flooding right now. I can tell you. So thank you guys. And yeah, I hope we can all keep going, you know, and make the changes that need to happen. So, yeah.
Thank you.
We can round it up. And Friday.
I'd love to just add something to Kamyar, just because I can relate. Obviously, we're both Iranian. I think in my situation, we exiled to Europe, and it was a lot easier. But I can relate to you. I think, you know, especially Iranians are very symbolic. Like the language is symbolism, and then when you're fed so much darkness, and you grew up and were born in such a tumultuous, like dark environment, it's like everything is very, like, I always felt like a Debbie Downer, like in conversations with friends. It's because people were like indies, and I can relate to that, and I know what you're trying to say is like, you know, people want to stay positive and we'll have a conversation, and then you come in and you're like, but guys, everyone's dying. And I was that kid growing up, and I had to almost learn to assimilate, you know, and to just kind of go, but within that, you can still take action. And I felt like for me joining Thievery at the time that I did, I was 19 when I joined them, was because I wanted to be involved in like a world band. I didn't want to be stuck in like a musical genre, even though my heart is like for psychedelic rock. I'm a full-on psychedelic rock girl. But in the beginning of my career choices, I felt like the only way to make an impact in music was to make world music. And it took a lot of time and therapy to accept that it's okay for an Iranian girl to make psychedelic music. And now at 41, I have a psychedelic rock band in Austin, Texas.
Night Glitter, check them out.
But
Yeah,
you know,
incredible,
I feel like
music.
we're all amazing, and I hope that we take that within our cities and our musical communities to uplift other musicians that aren't getting the right platform and voices. Like for me, I know in Austin, we're really trying hard to uplift the Black community in the music scene, because you notice that a lot of the headliners are not, and yet there's so many Black musicians in Austin that aren't getting the platform that they deserve. So I hope that we all keep doing that with not just Black artists, but immigrants and Latinos. And we kind of just shift our music scene to go back to that era where we're all colorful and happy, or maybe that was just in my dreams, but you know.
Thanks, Lou.
Hope
Well,
that we
yeah,
get-
I mean, I think, Dave, one thing you said earlier was, you know, the direction of Turquoise is like, you said that, you know, you guys are going to consciously make music that has content that is relevant to what's happening. And you know, you did a whole Funkadelic record on Jam Cruise this year, and Funkadelic is one of the bands that were not afraid to talk about reality, their reality in their music. And in closing, I just want to encourage everybody to do that. Music is our weapon, and music is the way that we can make a difference, and that we can, you know, express ourselves freely and remind people and educate people. And I trust all of you will do that. But if there's one thing that we can do as musicians, it's continue to create and expose the bullshit through our music. And a lot of people are saying, you know, man, in the 60s, we were doing this and the songs were all revolutionary and this and that. And it's like, you know, we got to get back to that. Whether or not your song is going to be on the radio doesn't matter.
Yeah, but in the 60s, they were also putting down Black Panther, who
They
were
killed
like,
everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that's the thing. It's like you go back and, you know, for me, one of my idols was Tupac. And one of the things that I loved about Tupac was that his mom was a Black Panther. And I think a lot of people didn't realize that she was incarcerated, that he was born in jail, and she was getting people to sign up to vote. Like, that's why that woman was arrested. Like, that's crazy. So I think it's really important to like go back and talk about it and make music that's really relevant to what's going on. Like Cam, I know Cam and I have talked on the road about that frustration and appearing to be angry. And I remember actually that conversation. And then I started looking back at all the conversations I had with other Black artists who were like, looked at as being angry or like aggressive or like the Black man syndrome that some promoters talk about. And it's like, wait a minute. And like we would all just listen. And now I'm like, well, that man was angry because he was constantly put down and making less money than everyone else. And I do hope that we just make that change and that shift. And even listening to people talk about bands that we all like for example, the Funkadelic that you talked about, like one of the things that I hear the most about people, oh, they were so fucked up. And it's like, I think I'm tired of hearing that like people were fucked up, like that were doing drugs or they were crazy because they had like a political message. So I think it's really important to like kind of figure out and change those dialogues too, as far as the way we talk about musicians in the past.
And in the present, you know, I mean, promoters are notorious for saying, oh, it's a reggae band coming in, so who knows? Or it's a hip hop group, so there's going to be 30 guys backstage. And, you know, it's like, there's all of these layers of racism in the music industry. You know?
Hey, Jeff.
Yeah.
Sorry, I want to just kind of add to what both you and Lulu are saying. The way that all of you that are on this call can be of more help to the artists of color, to the artists that are within these more marginalized groups is by just simply paying a little bit more attention. In those moments where it might feel easy to make an assumption about a situation that you don't have much information on, or that might be third party, sometimes it's easy to fall back on old ways and generalizations. There was a moment that happened when the Suppers and Thievery Corporation were on tour together at a venue that a lot of people on this call have played at, where my band got in trouble, me specifically, because I was smoking a joint backstage on tour with Thievery Corporation. And
wow, that never happens with Thievery. I don't know why.
Yeah, so, but to add on to it, this was at a venue where the night before we had played there, Ministry had played there. Hash, who Jeff mentioned earlier.
You can say the venue. It's the Orange Peel. It must have been
the Orange Peel and
say it.
Oh, call them out. No, call them out now. Yeah.
Fuck that.
Call them out. Yeah. In DC, we closed Rock and Roll Hotel literally because of this. So we need to close the clubs or promoters that do that.
We didn't get in. We didn't get in trouble when we were smoking weed at Ministry. We didn't get in trouble the first night that we were smoking at the Orange Peel when it was our night playing. But the second night, they switched staff, and the runner, instead of introducing herself to me, introduced herself to everybody else that was male in my party. And then when she decided to introduce herself to me, started with, "You can't smoke that here. It's illegal. And if you don't put it out, I'm going to call the police." And I said, wow, we're starting with the police backstage at a music venue where I've smoked weed. This is my third night in a row. She said 3 nights. Ministry was here 2 nights ago. I said, I know, this is my third night in a row. I know I don't look like I might be at a Ministry concert, but Hash was like, we're going to go watch Ministry tonight. So I said, fuck yes, we're going to go watch Ministry. Smoked God knows how much those first 2 nights. But that third night, she walked past all of my bandmates, came straight to me. And instead of apologizing, instead of just saying, hey, go smoke this somewhere else. Hey, you smoke outside. You know, giving me the rules, I was met with, we're going to call the police if you don't put that out. And when I asked to speak to the general manager, the girl started crying. And I got to listen to speech after speech after speech about how good of an employee she was, and about what the law is in Asheville, North Carolina, on smoking weed inside at the Orange Peel.
While black.
And I just sat there because this wasn't my first rodeo. This wasn't my first experience with racism. And I told them, I said, I don't have to play here. When my time comes, and it will come, for me to go back to Asheville and headline at the Orange Peel, I will opt to play 5 nights at the Great Eagle instead until it's time for me to graduate to whatever comes after the Orange Peel.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Oh, I remember that. I was really annoyed. Especially
Hey, Jeff.
I was smoking down the hall like a chimney.
And they said nothing to you. They said nothing.
So you came and we hung out in my room, which made me even angrier, because then I was waiting for her to come in so I could just say something because I was all amped up, but she never came. And that's part of the problem.
Well, the problem was she said, oh, sorry, y'all, I know this is not about this.
Yeah.
But she got mad at me because she said I called her a racist. I said, I didn't call you a racist. I called you a sexist because you took the time to speak to the male members of my team. I said, I didn't even think about racism, but let's go ahead and add that to the pile.
Yeah, I remember.
And
well,
Jeff,
we have a new...
Yeah, I want to add some. Oh, what you say?
Go ahead, Ish.
Yeah, I'm trying to, the point that you said about, trying to write new music about the movement and all that, I was trying to add out that there's like African music where I grew up at, there's a lot of music that's been written, like especially the music that I play, music, it was written by slaves like 1,000 years ago. So there's a lot of music that does exist, and it only talks about what's happening right now, what's happening today. It's for somehow it doesn't get to everybody in the world. It's just because I guess it looks different or it sounds different or something. But and speaking of the lyrics that I did on this song, everything that I talk about on that specific song is, you know, asking God to pray for the ancestors, which is like the slaves. And that song was written thousands of years ago. But what I'm trying to say is slave music does exist, and it's been straight up written and you know, given down to us by our ancestors. Just gotta find a way to translate it and, you know, trying to pass it on to this generation today, I guess.
Well, you do a great job with that.
Yeah, been trying, you know. Thank you, I appreciate that. But and for anybody that would like to discover more about it, it's Gnawa music, and it's been written by the griots. And the griots were as important as the king from the Ghana Empire, which is like the mid of Africa in the 11th century. And those were the first people that started getting kidnapped, captured to be slaves. And so the way why it's very popular in Morocco is because the port was known in Morocco, and the ones that would run away from the slave owners would get welcomed by Moroccans. That's why they moved it from griots to Gnawa. And Gnawa means collective. That's when everyone got connected in North Africa.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Yep, yeah, no problem. And if you guys want to, you know, if anybody you know that wants to know about that kind of music that's been written, like it's the right for everybody to know about it, and it's been sent to everybody. And for me and the other people that play the same music that I do, our job is to get it to you. So, you know, and the other thing too, you know, with a little bit more research, you might end up knowing more than me. You know what I'm saying?
Thanks, Ish. I love you, bro.
Jeff, I just wanted to say one more thing to touch on a few things that were mentioned about the 60s. You're saying is the time where a lot of music was written about change and revolution. And I think I've watched so many things, but I think in that movie 13th, they pointed out that at the same time the civil rights movement was happening, and those leaders were actually being systematically profiled by the government and assassinated. It was called like the Summer of Love, and a lot of white people who thought they were having this beautiful revolution, you know, celebrating diversity and humanity, distracted by that, didn't see really what was going on behind the scenes, the big picture, the people pulling the strings. And so while, you know, I think we're a white band, we play black, all American music is black music. I've said it before, I'll say it a million times.
Yeah,
it's built on. It is our responsibility to write music about it, speak about it more, but also have those conversations, like we were saying, be anti-racist, not just not being racist yourself. And you mentioned the unfriending, and that's been something that I think is a difficult thing, because I'm also trying to engage personally with people who might be close to seeing things in a better way, and trying to have this. I've been guilty of just lashing out and unfriending or screw you or whatever it is, but also trying to then be like, okay, actually, how can I change someone's mind? Because this is what 2016 looked like right before Trump got elected. It was everybody unfriending and everybody just saying F you all over the place. And I just hope that there can be conversations in addition to music. You know, it's all important, but I just wanted to mention that maybe it's good to try to, some people may be lost cases, but on the ones that aren't, I've been having some 2-hour discussions that, while I have to hold my tongue sometimes, it ends up really meaningful, and we
I agree.
Yeah, and thank you for that. Thank you for that. That's the way everyone's attitude should be. It's more of a change than trying to stop something. And from my end, I've been touring in the East Coast, in the worst places of white supremacists, singing in a different language, and I've never came across any racism.
But you know, you attract, and that's why it's good to not unfriend, because you're singing to your choir. So the people that will come and see you are the people who want to listen to you.
Exactly.
I think when you start unfriending, I'm like you, Dave. Sometimes I lash out and I get really angry on social media and next door in my neighborhood. But something that I've done differently is like, yes, I'll block you and unfriend you if you start using profanity and insults. I don't want that kind of stuff around me, and I think it's aggressive. But if you're just seeing things differently, I'm going to keep you, because I'm hoping that we're going to continue having a dialogue because we see things differently. And hopefully throughout the year, I get to change your mind, or maybe just if you're walking on that edge, I get to like push you over a little bit, you know? So I think it is important not to, you know, unfriend and unfollow, because you don't want to be preaching to the choir all the time, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That's huge.
It's really important to branch out and talk to people who don't see eye to eye.
And the southern thing is you can't unfriend your uncle, you know? You got to deal with it.
Yeah, you got to change him. You got to change him, not block him, you know? And I think that's a huge philosophy that people need to take on. I'm glad.
I'd like to add to David and Lulu that you know, that's part of the anti-racism, especially for white people, is that we have to start doing the heavy lifting that our Black brothers and sisters, our indigenous people of color, that they're having to relive that trauma with every fucking conversation over and over and over again. It's our job now to step up and educate our white brothers and sisters and be like, look, like, you need to not be so willfully ignorant here and jump on board, because, you know, like, I understand if a Black friend of mine is going to unfriend somebody because they're tired of seeing that shit all the time, you know, whereas like, you know, where we've typically been able to ignore stuff and look the other way, now it's our job to engage in those conversations and do the heavy lifting that everyone else has been having to do for generations, you know.
All right, well, we got a new member of our call here, and I want to hear from DJ Logic down here. Are you still in New York?
Oh, on mute.
Still in New York. How you doing?
What up, Jason? How you doing, brother? Can you turn yourself up a little bit? Speak up a little bit.
Yeah. Yep, in New York. How's everybody doing?
Good.
All right.
Good, man. How you doing?
Yeah, just hanging. Sorry. I live by the highway. Sorry if you don't hear that. Yeah, in New York, and you know, just hunkered down here at my parents, and I think we're in phase 2 of opening here in New York, and yeah, things are slowly, you know, progressing. Hopefully, I don't know. I haven't been out, so but slowly getting back to somewhat, you know, something. I don't know what that is yet. You know.
So, what has your experience been like? You know, you've been a DJ through many eras of the modern times, and you know the music you play, and the venues you play, and the people you play with, you share stages with, maybe warm up, maybe do the late night. What has your experience been with, you know, we've been talking a lot about, you know, the kind of social revolution going on in America, and I'd love to hear some stories from you about, you know, things that have happened to you, maybe people you've been able to enlighten along the way, and help educate. So what do you got for us?
I mean, some of my experiences with some of the stuff I experienced through the years. I mean, you know, experienced a lot. And, you know, I've been blessed and fortunate to travel all over the world, you know, and see so many different cultures and stuff. Some of the things that stick out to me, you know, I was, you know, well, actually in my neighborhood, growing up in the Bronx, you know, I had experiences of some racial stuff with the police. You know, they pulled a gun out on me. So, you know, that was kind of odd and crazy. You know, I was just hanging out with my friends on the corner. You know, we were just hanging out, and you know, I was a teenager, so I never experienced something like that. You know, you hear these things and stuff, and you know, I just came out to just play. You know, being a teenager, just coming out to hang out with my friends, nothing else. We weren't doing anything, and you know, the police just came out and pointed their guns. You know, nobody had any weapons or anything. So, you know, and that probably was like early 80s or something like that, you know? So that was like one incident for me. And, you know, so that kind of scared me for a while. Well, still to this day, actually. And when I see all these other things happening, you know, with innocent people losing their lives and stuff like that, you know, so I could have been one of those people, you know, and then, you know, things would have never been, you know, recorded. There was none of all of that stuff that you see now, you know, so it would just been a statistic, as they say. You know, and then another time I remember going to Germany, and I was on a tour with Vernon Reid, and the group was called Mistaken, I think it was Mistaken Identity or Mask, and we were somewhere up in the Alps in Germany, one of the ski towns, and you know, you hear about skinheads and stuff like that. I never ran into that until we toured Germany, you know, and I was with a group of friends, with a group of my bandmates, I should say, and everybody, you know, individually was a different race, you know, and you know, we got to the village where we supposed to play, and yeah, you know, we saw these group of guys walking on the side of the street, maybe like 4 or 5 of them, and you know, and they just started pointing and saying stuff, you know, not in English, but you could tell they were somewhat, you know, skinheads, you know, and they didn't want us to be there. You know, they must have saw a picture or something that they knew that we were coming in town because they were near our venue where we were playing at. And, you know, we were just coming back from having dinner, and we actually, you know, we just looked at them from you know, the other side of the street. You know, let them talk. They talk because, you know, we knew we were in another country, so we didn't want no nonsense. But if, you know, if things would have happened, we would have, you know, the Bronx would have came out of me. You know, but you know, it was, you know, it was just something I never experienced, and you know, it was something. I was just like, wow. And then as I got back to the venue, a tour manager got, you know, he got tested by the skinheads. Those guys actually went onto the bus, or went by the bus, and, you know, and this guy, you know, he was a Jewish guy, great guy, tour guide, and, you know, he just, yeah, he was scared. He was scared shitless, and excuse my French, but yeah, he was scared, and he told us about it, and we told him that we saw the guys who just came up to the bus that bothered him, you know, and it was a, you know, it was a scary moment for everybody, you know, individually, and you know, we're about to play and stuff like that. You know, we're not expecting to see that walking, you know, coming into the town and stuff. We thinking that, you know, we're gonna be welcomed, you know, and yeah, it was one of those experiences that I was just like, wow, you know, I couldn't believe it. And you know, I've been blessed and fortunate to tour here in the States as well, you know, and I played in some places that, you know, you know, I've seen the Confederate flags and things like that, you know, and some of those things affected me, you know, because you hear about those, you know, from your ancestors and read them in the books and things like that. So, you know, so sometimes I mean, you know what you're about to walk into, or what the vibe is going to be like, or, you know, when you get off the tour bus and you walk into the gas station of some, you know, place that, you know, you're not wanted, or get them ugly looks and things like that, you know. And yeah, I always kind of just, you know, I was just always just like wow, you know, it's still there, you know, the racism is still there, you know. And you know, I just think about it, and I'm just like, wow, you know. And I just go back to you know, just kind of reading books and things like that and stuff, and you know, and sometimes sit down with, you know, my grandparents and my parents, you know, and just talking about it, you know. And yeah, I just been, yeah, that's all I could say, you know, right now.
Right on. Well, I'm glad you got to join us towards the end of this. We've all kind of gone through and talked about how we're feeling, and experiences we've had and whatnot. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and end the recording real quick. But